all is well. Can I get you all to like and share? Can I get you all to like and share? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Apostle Elisa Biggers, and I want to welcome you to Deliver Me From Me. This is a broadcast that I do every Thursday, and it's a spinoff of my healing and deliverance ministry that I have, and that I teach coaching, one-on-one coaching, and I teach mentorship. And so that if you're interested, if you like what you hear, can I ask you to inbox me? And if you're ready for change, you're ready for growth, please let me know. And so for the month of October, we've been talking about trauma and abuse. We've been talking about trauma and abuse. Why are we talking about trauma and abuse? Because you know what? When you look around in our world and our culture, people have been traumatized and people have been abused. And guess what? We have become so comfortable. Blessings to you. We have become so comfortable in abuse and trauma that there's very little people are trying to get healed of it. So many people have gotten comfortable in their trauma and they got comfortable in their abuse, and they're not trying to deal with their issues. They trying to put some microcore, some weave, some makeup, some surgery on top of hurt and on top of abuse. You got some men trying to put some rims, trying to put some muscle shirts on top of feeling wounded, dealing with self-rejection, dealing with self-hatred. And so you got a group of people, you got a mindset of people that don't want to look at themselves, but it's easy for them to blame other people because they don't want to take responsibility that they got some issues. And so on this station, this is where you saying, I got some issues. I'm taking responsibility for my issues, because you got to understand, you can't change another person, but the person who you can change is change yourself. And so what we're going to talk about is learning the effects of trauma and abuse, how this may affect a person's life. If a person do not get healed of trauma and abuse, can I tell you it's going to affect your life? Can I tell you it's going to make you make bad decisions? It's going to cause you to be in the wrong relationships. It's going to cause you to marry the wrong people. It's going to cause you to do the wrong thing, because you're going to be doing things based off your feelings and emotions, and you're not going to be attached to God to know what's best for you. Because see, this is what a lot of times you got people trying to make decisions, but they making decisions from a hurt place. They making decisions from what has happened to them in their past, because they have not faced the reality that they're dealing with some unresolved issues. And a lot of times what people fail to realize, we deal with unresolved issues by looking at our parents. Can you be honest to say that, you know what, my parents, they lived some jacked up life? Yes, we love our parents, but we saw the dysfunction. You ask the average person, oh, they make all kind of stuff. Oh, I came from the best family. Oh, everything is good. Can I tell you, nobody is perfect, but blessings to you. But we got to be honest with ourselves. There was a lot of things that we saw that left us abandoned, that left us wounded, that left us hurt. And guess what? If you're not willing to talk about it, you're going to find yourself duplicating them same cycles. Why? Because your brain remembers everything. Your subconscious mind, it records the good and the bad and the ugly. And what your subconscious mind do, it begins to bring up the triggers in your life, and it begins to remind you, this is what happened to you. And so what's a trigger? It's a stressor that have happened to you that reminded you of something that what another person did to you. And so especially if it's negative, if somebody hit you upside the head and somebody touch your head and you turn around and knock their head, knock them out, guess what? That was a trigger, because it reminded you of what somebody did to you in a negative way. It's in this is where we got to be willing to deal with our issues, because if you're not willing to deal with your issues, we're going to keep being attracted to other hurt people. Can I tell you, there's no such thing that you're going to get a healthy relationship if you're not healthy. I'm going to say that again. You're not going to be in a healthy relationship until you take the time to get healthy yourself. And I can tell you, as being a leader, I find more people that's abused and trauma, and they're so so broken in their mind, they think that the abuse and trauma, they think that that's normal. It's because they have not been exposed and that they're not trying to learn what has happened to them. This is where we got a lot of unresolved issues in our lives, where we've been raped, we've been dealt with rejection, we dealt with self-hatred, we dealt with grief, abandonment, insecurity, whatever your issue may be. But when you don't deal with your unresolved issues, it breaks your conscience. It breaks that part of your mind that you don't know the difference between what's good and bad. And so when your conscience is broken, it causes you to begin to make poor decisions. And when you make poor decisions, you make it based off the effect of what has happened to you, not what's good for you, but based off your current feelings. And this is where we got to get in the Word of God, and we got to allow God to heal us. But before I get there, let me tell you what is trauma. Trauma is an emotional response to something that has happened to you that was so terrible and so devastating that it affects your life. How many times we have went through things that were so devastating and something so hurtful that it hurted us, it changed the way we look at life, it changed what we want to do. And so now you just moved on to another relationship, but you did not seek any kind of counseling. You did not get any type of help. You did not get any type of prayer that will help you to see things from the right perspective. But you begin to start looking at situations in life now from a hurt place. You begin to start looking at situations from a wounded place. You begin to start seeing yourself going back to old things that you had put away. You start lying. You start drinking. You start being around old relationships that you had cut off. And so what trauma do is it takes you back to a familiar place. It takes you back to an old place that seems comfortable to you. And because you are hurt and wounded, it seems like it's okay, but not understanding that means that you're going backwards in life. And so when you're going backwards in life, what a lot of people fail to recognize, that means that you're separating yourself from God. Now you're breaking free. You're breaking free from Him. You're no longer connected to Him to know what's right and what's wrong. And so you find yourself being led by your pain. You're led by your struggle. You led by your hardship. And this is where we got to get to a place that we got to start talking about this stuff. Stop putting alcohol on it. Stop getting so drunk because you don't want to deal with your issues. Stop getting so high smoking weed and CBD because you don't want to deal with your pain. Stop having sex with this person and that person because you just want to be wanted. You just want to be needed. And this is a result of because of the trauma and the abuse. Abuse is when you have been violated, when you have been violated and mistreated, cruelty, based off what somebody have done to you. And see, and this is where the enemy wants you to be at a place where you become stuck. You begin to start believing the lie that this is the way that it is, that it's not going to get any better, but he wants you to feel like, you know what, I'm stuck like this and things are not going to change. Can I tell you what does this mean? It makes you feel like you're trapped. It makes you feel like you're in a box and you can't get out, and you're looking around and you saying, you begin to hyperventilate. You begin to feel stuck. You begin to see other people going forth in their life, but you can't seem to get over the hurdle. It's like you can't get things together. You're distracted. You're confused. Your mind is constantly always on what the person did to you, and you can't get over it. See, this is a result of trauma. And can I tell you, the trauma will show up in your emotions sometimes. Sometimes you can be having a good day and you just break out and start crying. What happened is because of you didn't get any unresolved, you didn't resolve the issue, so it just shows up out of nowhere. And so now you feeling depressed. Now you feeling like you can't make it. You're hyperventilating. Your thoughts are racing. You're breathing fast, and you feel like you know what, you're about to panic. This is what trauma does, and it affects your life tremendously. And the sad thing about it is when children see their parents in trauma, guess what? It teaches the children how to operate in trauma, because guess what? We are our children's first role models. You may not be saying this is what you do, but by that child looking at you, they are learning how to operate in trauma. So if they see mama keep on popping pills, guess what? You are telling that child by them looking at you to keep popping pills. If you begin to say, you know what, I can't take this, and you fight, you keep getting drunk, what you're doing, you're painting an image to that child that you got to drinking, and drinking is going to help the problem. And see, and this is what we got to really talk about, this blessings to you. What a lot of people fail to realize, you are trained by the trauma. What I mean, just like on the job, when they train you how to do a job, study shows people are trained by the trauma of their bloodline. So whatever that you saw going on in your family, guess what? You know, if you've seen a lot of people, a lot of early death, you see a lot of people being raped, a lot of people being molested, you see a lot of people dealing with rejection, dealing with unforgiveness, being hurt, feeling damaged, being misused. That trauma, it follows through the bloodline. And guess what? It's just like how you pass down an inheritance. Trauma is passed down even in the mind. It's passed down through the generations. And guess what? If you don't know how to recognize the trauma, you're going to walk smack into the trauma because you're not taking the time. And the sad thing about church people, we thinking that we can go to church and somebody can lay hands on us and the trauma is just going to go away. Can I tell you, yes, the anointing do breaks yokes, but you got to understand the Bible say through knowledge, people is delivered. So you got to get knowledge and you got to be willing to face your issue. You got to be willing to face your fears because that's where the anxiety is coming from. The anxiety is coming from because you don't want to face what happened to you. You don't want to talk about what they did to you. You don't want to talk about how you felt misunderstood, how you was dropped, how you was left alone, how you was abandoned by mama and daddy, how you was abandoned by your husband, how you was abandoned by your spouse. This is what the enemy wants you to feel stuck in. And so sometimes people feel ashamed and they don't want to talk about it. But if you don't want to talk about it, how can you be free? And saying this is why you find so many people, they're angry. They can go from 0 to 100 in less than a minute because they got unresolved issues that they never had addressed. And so therefore they've been trained by the trauma. They've been trained from the anxieties, from the fears, leaving some feeling insecure, feeling unstable. You wonder why you always up and down. You feeling broken in your mind because this is an inward thing. This is on your inside. On the outside, you may look fine. On the outside, you may look normal. But what people fail to realize is your struggles on the inside. And so when you're dealing with people that's dealing with trauma and abuse, sometimes in a great deal of people, they don't want to talk about it and they like to hide it. They like to hide it as if everything is fine when really it's not. And so this is why some people don't have any boundaries. This is why they let people walk all over them. They let people say what they want to say. As a result of the trauma, it's where they have been damaged and they don't know how to articulate what's going on. This is where some people feel invisible. They feel like they don't matter. They feel like they stuck and they feel like my life is ruined. My life is going to always be like this, not understanding those are lies. And this is why if you're going to deal with trauma, you got to be willing to pay attention to your thoughts. Can I tell you that you are not your thoughts? Just because you think it in your mind, it does not mean that it is you. And so you got to begin to understand everything that in your mind that comes to your mind is not you. Some of it is the trauma and the abuse that has happened to you. And you got to begin to recognize it. So when you say, don't nobody love me, don't nobody care about me, you got to know that that's that rejection. That's that rejection from mama and daddy. That's that rejection from that spouse. You got to understand you're spewing out what's on the inside of you. And because you did not know that it was the trauma, you thought it was something in present day life, not understanding it was things that was rooted back. And I have found out a lot of people that goes to church, they don't want to talk about these issues. They want to have church on top of trauma. They want to play and act like God is good on top of trauma. Can I tell you, this is where you got to be willing to deal with your issues. Because if you can't deal with your issues, God can't use you. Because guess what you're going to do? You're going to eventually hurt other people. That's why we see hurt people, because the hurt people did not take the time to get healed. And when you don't take the time to get healed, you find yourself hurting other people unintentionally, but you can't do nothing but hurt them because you are hurt. And this is where you got to begin to recognize that you got some things going on with you. And so I got a couple characters in the Bible that I want to show you where trauma affected them. When you look at Judas in the Bible, he was one of the 12 disciples that walked with Jesus. This is where Judas began to compare himself to his leader. He began to compare himself. He began to be envious. He began to be jealous. And he wanted to lead from the back. Judas was the one that carried the treasurer. And so when Mary began to wash Jesus' feet with her hair, and she began to take the oil that they would normally sell for the poor, Judas got angry. Judas got very infuriated because, see, when you're dealing with trauma and abuse, just because it doesn't make sense to you don't mean that it's not right, because God says that my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not like your thoughts. And he thought just because it cost a lot of money that it should go to the poor, but he had no clue that Jesus was the Messiah and that Jesus was getting ready to die and that she was preparing him for what he was about to go through. But because he was not connected to his leader, he began to become an enemy. How many times you have become an enemy to somebody because of your trauma, because you was left behind by mama and daddy and somebody else had to raise you, and then now you become an enemy to your other siblings because you didn't grow up in the same house with them? How many times you become an enemy to your mom because that's the best thing that she could do was to give you away to somebody else because she felt like what she was doing at that day and time, she could not take care of you. So now you made her your enemy, and so then now you feel that you can disrespect. Now you feel that you can call her out of her name. But seeing this, not understanding, you didn't look at it from her perspective. You looked at it from a wounded, abandoned perspective. And this is why God said we have to take the time to get healed. And seeing this is a conversation that some people don't want to have because, again, you see so many people, they're broken, even on social media. Let's put up these pictures, act as if we got it going on, when really it's a competition going on, because I want to make people think that I'm fine. I want to make people think that I'm just as good as you, not understanding you got people sitting up there competing with one another, all because they got unresolved issues and they not feeling self-love. Because when you love yourself, guess what? You don't have to compete with another. When you love yourself, you are comfortable being who you are, and you don't have to prove nothing to nobody. This is where sometimes you feel like you got to defend your name, and God said, no, you don't have to do anything. Let people say what they want to say. Let people think what they want to think. Because when you learn, when God is beginning to heal you, he begin to teach you how to love self and how to begin to trust him in the midst of the situation. And so when you look at Judas, that's what he did. His abuse and trauma, it made him forfeit his promise. Instead of him walking with the rest of the disciples, his life was cut short because he began to look at things from a result of a wounded and a hurtful self. The second person, when you begin to look at Leah in the Bible, this is where she was the sister of Rachel, and Jacob, he was in love with Rachel, but the Bible say he did not want Leah. But because Leah was the oldest, the father made her sleep with Jacob when he knew that Jacob did not want Leah. But guess what? Leah went with the plan because she wanted to be wanted. How many times a woman want to be wanted by somebody and you know that he don't want you, when you know he's not interested in you, but you think if I sleep with him, you think if you have sex with him, some women think if I have a baby with him, it's going to make him love me. But guess what? When you look at the story between Leah and Rachel, the Bible say Leah began to have babies. The more babies she began to have, it caused him to hate her. He did not like her. He still was in love with Rachel, her sister. And you got to ask yourself, what kind of woman would you want to be with somebody that you know that they really love your sister, but you think if you sleep with him that you can begin to make him love you? See, when you don't love yourself, you are willing to fall for anything. This is why sometimes we as ladies, sometimes we want attention from men. We want them to look at our bodies. We want them to want us because our conscience have been broken because of daddy issues or been broken by other men. And so you feel like if I get somebody to look at me, it's going to make me fulfill, not understanding that that's a lie from the pits of hell. Because guess what? A man can sleep with you and still don't want you. He can have sex with you and still don't want you. He can have a baby with you and still don't want you. And so this is where we got to begin to wake up, because you got a group of women feeling like I can buy a man. If I buy him, if I get him what he wants, therefore he's going to love me. Not understanding some people will use you just because they know that you're broken. And sometimes especially when you're dealing with emotional abuse, this is the type of abuse where somebody call you out of your name and you sit there and you continue to make excuses and you continue to accept what they're doing. What that person is doing is trying to train you for the abuse. They trying to train you to tear down your self-esteem. They're training your soul to be broken, and they're training you to be at a place where you will not lead them, but you will believe the lies that they telling you, that nobody will want you but them. See, and this is why we got to understand, you will find yourself being in a relationship with somebody that does not have your best interest, because you got to understand, love does not hurt. The Bible begins to say love covers a multitude of sin, and you got to understand love is when you honor one another, you respect one another. The Bible say love is not puffed up, love is not jealous, love is not envious. And so when you're in relationships and you feel in some kind of way, you're dealing with the hurt of a broken person, that they are emotionally abusing you. You got some parents, they will emotionally abuse their children. They will call their children out of name, call them stupid, call them dumb, telling them that they remind them of their mama. You remind me of your daddy, and they will begin to call them all kind of names, not understanding you are crushing the way that that child sees themselves. And so if a child see themselves from a broken place, then you wonder why their self-esteem is not in the right place. It's not there because you tore them down. The Bible says a foolish woman tears her house down, but a wise woman builds it up. So how can we say that we are a wise woman when we're calling our children out of name, and then you sit up here talking about you want a man? If you can't build up your child, what can you do with a man when we're constantly tearing them down with our mouths? This is where we got to get healed, and we got to understand that there's some brokenness with the men and there's some brokenness with the women. The reason why we keep attracting broken people is because we're broken, and the sad thing is some don't want to spend time by themselves, and when they are by themselves, they spend time looking for a man instead of dealing with your unresolved issues. This is where you got to begin to say, why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? How come I don't want to let the past go? How come I keep talking about things that I can't change? How come I'm so frustrated? How come, you know what, I can't move beyond this? This is where you got to get to know yourself, and you got to begin to pay attention to your actions, because your action is showing you how this trauma has affected your life. This trauma has affected you where now you are a mean, nasty, low-down person. And the sad thing is people are so wicked. They're not loyal. They're not committed. They're not faithful. They go from person to person to person to get what they want. But then yet in their mind they expect somebody to be faithful to them when they can't even be faithful to God to allow God to heal them. This is why the Bible say go back to your first love. God is your first love, because he's going to show you how to love in a relationship. He's going to show you how to be committed. He's going to show you how to be faithful. He's going to show you how to be honorable. Sometimes people dishonor God because they don't know how to sit down and be taught. They don't know how to sit down and be delivered. It's like they got ants in their pants because they're too busy. I want somebody to see my gift. I want somebody to know I got a word. But can I tell you, you're no good with your word if you still carrying all your baggage. You're no good praying for somebody because the only thing you're imparting to them is everything that's in you. And so you're bringing more hurt to other people, because the Bible says the anointing destroys the yoke. Can I tell you, the anointing has to crush you. The anointing has to kill everything in this flesh so that Christ may arise within us. And sometimes people are not willing to go through the process. They don't want to go through the hurt. They don't want to go through the pain. Sometimes when you're going through a breakup, you go through a grieving process where You're feeling hurt. You're feeling bad. This is any kind of breakup, job, friendship, lovers, relationship. It's because you begin to miss that person. You begin to miss that situation. And you begin to start focusing on the good instead of the bad. And that's what trauma and abuse would do to you. Trauma and abuse will have you focusing on the good times. And you forgot all the bad stuff where you like to lost your mind. You like to have your head broken off. Where you sit up here almost got killed. Where you know what, people lied on you, that your career was almost ruined. See, we forget about those things, not understanding you got to stay through the process because you got to be willing to go through the pain. You got to be willing to say, you know what it is that God was trying to tell me that I did not see. What it is that God was trying to reveal to me that I did not listen. See, this is where God's want to sit you down to be by yourself and you're crying. You had a good day at work and all of a sudden you crying and you say, I miss them. You say, I want them. And God is asking you, why are you doing what you're doing when you know the person isn't any good for you? This is where you got to be honest with yourself and realize that you have gotten addicted to trauma. Can I tell you, it's a such thing called trauma bonding, where people will be addicted to the person that abused them. And this is very common. This is where a woman or a man will be connected and they want the person that abused them. They stay connected because they feel like I gotta prove my love to them by letting them beat on me. I gotta prove my love by staying with them. I gotta prove to them that I'm not gonna give up on them by letting them hurt me. We gotta understand that that's a form of abuse, and you are addicted to trauma bonding. And this is an indication that your mind has went through so much abuse. You don't know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. And that's why God will pull you away where you need to be by yourself, and you need to see where your family is toxic. All they do is gossip. All they do is start mess. All they do is throw rail for rail and talk about one another. They got a split tongue. 1 minute they talk about God. The next minute they cussing one another out. This is where you got to stick back and you got to be willing to go through what God is trying to show you about the situation. When you're not willing to allow God to show you what's going on with you. You didn't hear me say what he's trying to show you about them. He's trying to show you where you are addicted to the trauma, where you are connected to the abuse. And he's trying to show you that you blessings to you, that you got to detox yourself. You got to detox yourself from the abuse, and you got to cry. Sometimes we feel like we don't want to cry. No, you got to cry. Crying is good, because what are you doing? You're letting out the hurt. You're letting out the pain. This is where you got to tell God, this hurts. This is where you got to begin to say, God, I need to connect myself back to you, because you may find out that you have lost yourself in the relationship. You have lost yourself trying to please this other person. You may have found that you have made them your God, and you was in idolatry. It's where you stop singing in the choir. You stop going to church. You stop praying. You stop doing what you normally do because of the relationship and where you made that person your idol. So this is where God is trying to open up your eyes and show you your error. He's trying to show you your ways. And this is where you got to be willing to let God show it to you. Can I ask you a question? Why do we always want to wait till the prophet to tell us, when you know what the prophet should have to tell you? You need to step back and let God minister to you. Why are we always jumping to the prophet, jumping to somebody to tell us when we already know what's going on? But here it is, we say that we love God, but yet we want another person to tell us that what we're doing wrong, when you really know that you're doing wrong. See, can I tell you, the trauma will affect you and have you acting like a little kid. It will have you acting like a hurt little boy or a hurt little girl. The moment somebody tell you the truth, you get in the attitude. Like, some people will hear what I'm saying and they'll get off. You know why? Because they don't want to hear the truth. It's where they have made up lies about their life, and they are taking these pictures, and we going on these vacations, and we got this house, we got all this stuff going on, and all of it is a facade to try to compensate for the trauma. Is this for everybody? No, because some people are dealing with their issues, but it's a lot of people that are not dealing with their issues because they're too much trying to conversate, and they're trying to prove to everybody, I'm normal just like you, or I got just what you got. When you're dealing with the trauma, you're going to learn to love self. And that's right. Trauma will lead you to narcissists. It will lead you to people who will control you, people who will try to make you think that it's your fault because they don't want to take responsibility for their actions. It's with people who will abuse you, people who will sit up there and they will gaslight you, and you sit up here knowing that they did wrong, but the way they don't put it, they make you looking at yourself. And this is where you got to begin to say, God, I need help. This is where sometimes we got to realize that we're in a bad place. And the sad thing about this, God will leave you in this situation until you recognize that something is wrong. When you can't recognize that you're in a bad situation, God will let you stay there until you begin to look and say, you know what? This relationship shouldn't be like this. If I'm constantly always fussing and fighting, we're not communicating, we're not doing anything, that God is trying to let you know something is wrong. And sometimes in the church, we tell people, pray. But can I tell you, you've been praying all 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Can I tell you, it don't take God 30 years to change nobody. It don't take God 30 years to change a situation. This is what we got to recognize. Some people don't want to change. And we got to be honest with ourselves and say, you know what? They don't want to change. And guess what? We don't want the same thing. And so therefore, this is where you got to realize, do you love you enough to walk after the promise that God got for you, or you're willing to settle? Because sometimes people are willing to settle just to say, I'm in a relationship, just to say, I got a friend, just to say, you know what, I don't want to be by myself. And so you got so many people, because they are broken. You got so many men, they'll say, you know what, I'd rather have some woman than no woman at all. That's an indication you're talking to a broken man. Because when you are willing to share your woman with 4 and 5, 6 other men, because just to say you got her, you are broken in your mind because of the rejection and the abuse that you have went through. It have caused you to look at the relationships in a tainted perspective. And so now you're no longer looking at it in a healthy manner, but you're just tolerating the abuse. This person only used you. This person is taking you for everything you got. And you got to begin to understand that that relationship is not normal. You got to know that you are dealing with abuse. This is what Delilah did with Samson. Samson was in a relationship with his parents, forewarned him, you ought to be in a relationship with people like us. This is why God said we need to be in relationship with people of our own kind. You need to be equally yoked up, because when you're unequally yoked up, somebody is going to pull another person away. And so guess what? Delilah was sent on an assignment by the enemy. And so that means that the devil will put people in your life when you have not dealt with trauma and abuse. The devil will put people in your life to take you all the way down, to destroy you. That's what he did to Samson. Samson began to be in a relationship with Delilah, and he knew she was a harlot. He knew she slept around, but he was so in love with lust. He lusted after her because she was beautiful, and he liked it having sex with her. Can I tell you? And she began to ask him secrets. What's the secret to your strength? Can I tell you, this is where you got to understand, when you're dealing with trauma and abuse, it will have you telling your business to people who don't mean you any good. She kept pestering him. Tell me, what's the secret to your strength? She began to drink. He wasn't supposed to drink. He wasn't supposed to be in any wild parties, but he began to start drinking. He started partying, and guess what he did? He laid his head on her lap. He laid his head on the lap of the person that the enemy put to take him down. How many times people are laying their head in the lap of the person that hell sent to take them down? She began to ask him what it is that's causing your strength. He began to tell her, it's my hair. He said, if my hair is cut off, I will be as any regular man. Guess what she did? When he went to sleep, she began to call the men to cut his hair off. And when she began to tell him, Samson, the Philistines are coming, when he got ready to fight, he did not have any strength. The sad thing about it is, he didn't even know that God had left. He didn't even know the Spirit of God had left him. This is where you got to understand when you're dealing with trauma and abuse, the Spirit of God will leave because you choose to worship another God. You choose to focus on somebody that's bringing you pain. It's where you forgot about your lover. You forgot about the person that was with you from day one, and you begin to pursue another person. And he didn't even recognize that the Spirit of God had left him. When you read the story, the Bible talked about how Samson ended up, when his hair grew back, they began to put him in bondage. They began to put him in prison. And the Bible talked about how as his hair grew back, he began to cause the biggest death in Israel, but he died himself. And he died because he chose not to listen. This is where you got to understand God will put people in your life to help you to deal with your trauma and your abuse. And if you don't ever want to talk about it, guess what? You're going to stay there in that place. You're going to stay in that abuse because you chose not to listen. Because I told you, trauma and abuse was downloaded through the bloodline. It was passed down from generation to generation, where it has become a norm. And so when people don't educate themselves to find out where is trauma operating in my life, you will find yourself being easily abused. This is why you have crying spells where you just cry, and you have bouts of anger. You be angry for nothing when you can't have your way because you feel left out. You feel betrayed. You feel like, you know what, I did all of this and they do not accept me. I did all of this and they don't want me. Not understanding that it's the trauma, and you got to begin to pay attention to your actions. Can I tell you, it's one thing that people don't recognize. See, I'm the type of person, I like to tell people why you think the way that you think, because if you understand the way that you think, you will begin to recognize why you do what you do. Because sometimes we do things off our feelings and not understand we be sabotaging ourselves. So now understanding that your brain, it remembers the trauma. And guess what your brain gonna do? It's gonna do everything to keep you in a traumatized place. It's gonna do everything to keep you in a place of feeling like a victim, because your brain don't want you to go through withdrawals. Your brain don't want you to go through pain. Can I tell you, in order to get delivered from the trauma and abuse, you got to be willing to go through pain. When you look at Psalms 119, I'm going to show you something. When you look at Psalms 119 and you look at verse 71, it said, it was good for me that I was afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. This is what he said. It was good that I went through. Why? Because when you begin to go through, you begin to see what you did wrong. You begin to see where you ignored the red flags. You begin to see that God was talking to you, but you was not listening. This is where you begin to take inventory over your life, and you begin to allow the Spirit of God to show you. This is why God will allow you to go through pain and go through brokenness, because he's showing you your soul has to be crushed. Your soul has to be crushed so that you can get delivered. Your soul got to be crushed so that you can get healed and you can recognize that you got some issues that need to be dealt with. See, this is where you will stop focusing on the good memories and you will look on, you know what, I could not prosper. I could not go forward. I could not, you know what, speak how I felt. So you got to begin to look at the real truth and stop looking at what felt good, you know, temporarily, but you got to begin to look at it. But could you go forward? Was you stuck? Did you feel like you was trapped? Did you feel like you was nothing? Did you feel like you was a slave? See, these are things that you got to remember. That's it. God got to strip you down so that you can begin to recognize what you did. It was an error. And so he's trying to show us, because our parents did not teach us what to do, what was right, and what was wrong. So we got to learn from the trauma and abuse. I'm going to say that again. He will allow us to go through because it was something that daddy didn't teach us. It was something that mama didn't teach us. It was something that somebody was trying to teach us, but we refused to listen. So God will allow the pain. He will allow you to go through what you're feeling to get your attention, attention to let you know that you must learn from this. And this is why you see so many people are going around from cycle to cycle. The Bible talk about how a people will be like a dog going back to its vomit because they refuse to learn from their mistakes. It's when a person refuses to sit back and say, God, show me me. Show me where I'm in error. Because when you can't learn from your behavior, you are foolish and you are a damage to yourself. You are wounded to yourself. This is why so many people keep themselves stuck in drunkenness. They keep themselves in alcohol, pornography. They always doing something because they don't want to be alone. Because when they alone, they start thinking about what it is that they're doing. When they alone, they start thinking about the hurt and the pain. When they alone, they start thinking about how they made bad choices. And so this is why people keep so busy, because they don't want to spend time by themselves. Because when they're spending time by themselves, it's reminding them that they have been traumatized. This is where you got to stop ignoring the negative, and you got to begin to recognize you got to get around some positive people that's going to hold you accountable, and you got to start working on yourself. When you are no longer working on yourself, can I tell you, let's go beyond I'm getting my hair done, I'm getting my nail done, I'm getting a haircut. No, working on yourself, go get you a counselor. Go talk about this stuff that has happened to you, that have left you wounded, that's left you hard men. Some men are so angry and frustrated because of things that they saw growing up, that they want to punish every female for what happened to them in their life. So this is where you got to be willing to open up yourself to a counselor and say, you know what, I am mad, I'm angry. And where you got to be honest with yourself about what it is that you're feeling. This is what some women got to get you a counselor and say, I'm mad because what I dealt with my father, what I dealt with the men in my life. And you got to begin to say, I can't keep punishing other men for what my father didn't do, who have hurt me didn't do. This is where we got to take responsibility for our actions, and we got to be willing to do our part. We have to stop being so irrational. It's where you just up and down because you don't want to hear nothing. You don't want to hear the rebuke. You don't want to hear things when people are letting you know some things about you that are not right, because you don't want to hear the truth. You ignore them and you walk off, and this is why some people are a runner and they are a vagabond. They go from house to house, place to place, relationship to relationship, because when it's not going their way, they move somewhere else. That's an indication that something is wrong with you, because that's not normal. This is why God said, I used the trauma to train you, because this was something that you did not ask me about. Everything that we deal with, we're supposed to ask God, God, should I do this? God, should I do this? But when you're making decisions based on your own feelings and emotions, you are still traumatized. When you're still looking for approval from the person that abused you, I just want them to know I'm sorry. I just want them to know I want us to be okay. Sometimes you can't be okay with the abuser. Sometimes you can't be okay with the person that hurt you. Sometimes you got to steal away and let God deal with you. And if this is a relationship that God want to sever, God would do it. But this is where you got to make up your mind and start fighting for you. How come we want to spend so much time trying to help other people when we're not spending the time to help ourselves? We won't go to a counselor. We won't sit there and talk about our issues, but we'll talk about how people did us. But look at how you are doing you, because the effects of the trauma have gotten you so wounded that every relationship you get in, you sabotage it. Every relationship that you get in, you mess it up. Every relationship that God sent to be a blessing to you, you mess it up because you have not dealt with your trauma. You have not dealt with the abuse. You can't even recognize a healthy relationship because you're so used to things and people are taking advantage of you. People that are calling you out your name, that you don't know how to handle genuine people. And this is where God is saying, my people are so damaged. They're so damaged, and we don't got such at a place where we want to be. We want to lead damaged. We want to get married damaged. We want to get married and spend all this time on a one day, but you don't even talk to that person. You don't even know what that man's favorite meal is. You don't even know what that woman's favorite color is. But we get so caught up in the height. We just want a friend. And you don't even want to be a friend to yourself. You don't even love yourself. Here it is. We overweight. We're not going to the doctor. We're not getting our checkup. We're not pouring. We're not getting into the word, allowing God to heal us. We're not going to see a therapist. We're not going to see a counselor. Only thing we're doing, we're around other sick people, and we're just exchanging our hurt. We're talking about what I went through. This what they did to me. And that's all that goes on. And the sad thing is, the devil is laughing at us. He said because they don't have any power, because God is not going to live in a person that's broken. God is not going to live into a person where you cannot be honest with yourself. Because when I go to prayer, the first thing God is going to deal with is me. When I go to prayer, God is going to deal with me and show me that I need to forgive. God is going to deal with me and say, I need to go get some help. I need to talk to my pastor. I need to talk with my counselor. I need to go get me a deliverance coach. I need to get somebody to hold me accountable. But when you got people that are not willing to go through their process because they're so anxious with being seen. And the sad thing is, this trauma will have so many people being evil. This is how Judas was so evil. He began to eat with Jesus. He began to sit at the table with Jesus, and he act as if everything is fine. When you dealing with people with trauma, they would eat with you. They would act like they fine, and they on assignment to assassinate you. They on assignment to destroy you. Can I tell you, you take the title off their name. It can be a husband, wife, friend, brother, sister, church member, pastor, co-worker, whoever it may be, where the enemy will use them to assassinate you because they have not dealt with it, and so they're insecure because they see you in a healthy place. They're insecure because they don't like what you're saying. Can I tell you, we are so messed up just because you don't like what another person's saying. You want to kill another person. You want to go to, I can't stand them. I hate them. You hate somebody because they telling you the truth. That's an indication of showing you that you are in a real bad place. And the sad thing is, when you can fake it till you make it, and you can get in somebody's face and you act like you love them when really you hate their guts, that's an indication showing how wicked you are and how your conscience is so broken. And how we can pray and you don't even deal with that in prayer. God, I know I'm thinking some negative thoughts about somebody I know I shouldn't be thinking. God, I'm saying some stuff about somebody that I know ain't right. God, I'm jealous about somebody that I know that this is not right. I'm in their face when I hate their gut. See, this is why you got to be willing to tell on yourself. But when you can't tell on yourself, but you claim you got a prayer life, but then yet you got all these hidden secrets. You got all of these ailments in your body. This is why some people are so sick. They're so sick in their soul. The Bible says, I want you to be in good health and I want your soul to prosper. It's because you got to be able to recognize when your soul is sick. That's why he began to say in 2 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, he said, cast down every imagination. Images in your mind. Cast down thoughts in your mind. I'm going to run them over. Cast down thoughts in your mind. I hope they die. Cast down thoughts in your mind. I want their husband. Cast down them thoughts in their mind. I want their wife. The thoughts that people think in their mind, that's an indication that those are strongholds that need to be dealt with. And the sad thing is, we'll say, God, I'm going through my finances, but we went to the root worker. You went to the root worker and you gave them some money to hurt somebody else, but then here it is, you wonder why you're going through in your finances, or you're colliding with somebody to harm another person who you all got a problem with. Instead of talking to them like men and women, we create these images and we act like these images are justifiable. And this is where we turn our head because we don't want to hear the truth and we don't want nobody to tell us the truth. And so we act as if, I know what I'm doing. I know what's in my heart. No, but you got to understand, it's your trauma and the abuse, and it got you wicked. And that's what have happened to Adam and Eve. They began to open up a third eye. And I'm going to teach on that. This is when they begin to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They begin to learn how to be evil. And that's what trauma and abuse does. It teaches you how to be evil and wicked. What does that mean? When you know how to bring chaos, when you bring confusion, when you bring bring a sadness and you bring pain to another person, you are operating out of a third eye, because what you feel for them is driving you to harm another person, and the fear of God is not evident in your life. This is where God is saying you got to look at what you're doing. This is where, you know what, where we throw rocks and we hide our hands. We act as if, you know what, everything is fine because we don't want the person to see what we did, and we're putting on a smile when really there's hatred. See, this is where trauma and abuse would do. It will affect your life, and it will make you into a witch or a warlock. And some people think that you got to wear black. Can I tell you, you don't have to wear a hat. You don't have to get on a broom. You don't have to wear on black. Is where you're walking in rebellion. This is where the Bible says rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. What does that mean? It's two different types of witchcraft. You can go to somebody and seek another spell to put on somebody, or you can be rebellious according to the word of God. And when you're rebellion and God telling you to forgive and you won't, God telling you to go and make it right and you won't, God is saying don't you speak evil and you do it anyway. It opens up the door to rebellion. And then rebellion, it opens up the door to witchcraft. And saying this is where God is saying you got so many people, so many, especially saints of God in the church. It's where they do witchcraft. They're burning sage. They're inviting evil spirits to come into their house. They're reading tarot cards. They're going to false prophets to go to tear up somebody's relationship because they feel like they're supposed to be in a relationship with a person. This is where they're doing evil things because they're so broken and they don't want to see another person happy. It's where people are so obsessed with other people. They're stalking people's social media pages. They're looking at their pages. They ain't their friend, but they watching and seeing what they doing. Because they trying to say that they've been praying, and they want to know, is they praying working? Is they praying what they've been speaking about another person? Or is the person sick? Is the other person going through? So they watching because they want to know, is what they saying working? No, you got to understand that's from a broken place. Because when trauma and abuse is in your life, because see, you seen mama go to the root worker, you seen dad go to the root worker, so guess what, the devil is already putting in your mind, go to the root worker to do what you want to do. You got people mopping your floors with turpentine, you up here throwing salt behind your back. It's gonna keep my enemies away. No, what you're doing is you're telling the demons to come to your house, and the demons is gonna find you. What people fail to realize, the demons aren't just going to mess with you, but they're going to mess with your children. When you're dealing with demonic spirits, you got to know that they are not loyal to your blessings to you. They are not loyal. They will come into your children's dreams. They will come into your dreams. And they will infiltrate your life, and they will make you pull away from God. They will make you pull away from the truth because your feelings mean so much to you than what God's word says. God tells you to honor your mother and your father that your days may be long, but because you feel the way that you feel, you say, I ain't honoring nobody. God may tell you, love your wife as Christ loved the church. I ain't doing nothing. See, that's what it brings on rebellion, and it brings on a different spirit of wickedness where it causes a person to see through a third eye. This is where the Bible says parents will turn on children. Children will begin to turn on their parents. And the Bible says a man's enemy will be those in their own households. It's because when you're dealing with evil, when you're dealing with wickedness, it's because people fail to check themselves. When you fail to check yourself, you are in error and you're in witchcraft. When you're in rebellion, you better know that witchcraft is following you. Why do the prophet got to come chase you? Why do the pastor got to keep tapping you on your shoulder? When God lives inside of you, you know what you're doing is wrong. You know what you said is wrong. The Bible says when a man lusted in his heart, Jesus told him he had already committed adultery. So you got to understand the laws of the kingdom is when you begin to think wicked in your mind, to God, you have already done it. So you're thinking that I'm going to murder somebody. To God's eye, you have already did it. You just working. You just now trying to plan out in the reality, but in the spirit realm. So you got to know that the spirit realm is just as real as the natural realm. Matter of fact, the spiritual realm is a parent realm to the natural realm. What does that mean? Whatever you want to see happen in the natural realm, that means you got to speak it. And this is why you get so many people, they're meditating on evil. They're meditating on hurting people. What they're doing is because they want to see it happen in the natural. And this is where we got to get healed and stop talking about who left you, talk about who hurt you, and deal with your issue so you can discern what's going on in your life. Because when you can't discern what's going on in your life, you are allowing your destiny to be deviated. God had you on the street called straight. Now you're making a detour. Now you're going in a direction that God never meant for you to go because you was led by your hurt and your pain. And so God is saying you got to get delivered, people of God. We got to stop chasing after things and people, and we got to start working on our salvation. The Bible said that you got to work out your salvation daily. It's not about going to church. Church is a place where you're getting the information, where you're getting the understanding, but this is something that we got to be applying every day, and we got to definitely be honest with ourselves, because if you're not honest with yourself, who else is going to be honest with you? And so as we're going to continue on in this journey, talking about for the rest of the month, talking about trauma and abuse. Some people, I'm tired of talking about, you know what, the reason why you're tired about talking about trauma abuse, because you're not dealing with it. Because when you're dealing with your issue, guess what? You want to hear more about it so you can say, God, show me, what am I doing wrong in my life? Because the sad thing is, we want to have church, but we ain't delivered. We want to have church, but you still walking around the same cycle. We want to have church, but we just like the people with the children of Israel. They took a 3-week journey, a 2 or 3 week journey, but yet they took it for 40 years because they could not deal with their issue. They could not deal with their woundedness in their abuse. It's because they longed to be in a place of bondage. It's where they was in a place of freedom, but I remember when I was in Egypt, where we were eating leeks and onions. God brought you to a wealthy place, but you keep going back to when you was in bondage. What kind of foolishness is that? This is where we got to begin to say, you got some serious things going on, in that your mind is in bondage. And we got to ask God, open up my eyes, open up my understanding, that I can see that I need to be free. Help me to see that my mind is messed up. And so as I close out, can I tell you to like and share, because this is where we got to do our part to make sure that we are healed and that we're walking in a healing place. Because if you're not walking in a healed place, you're going to be walking in a place of abuse. You're going to be walking in a place of trauma, and it's going to be your norm, because you got most people are traumatized and they comfortable in their trauma. Don't shoot the messenger. It's my job, because I ain't telling you nothing that I don't have to do. I got to go through the same process that you're going through. And so as I close out, I pray that this message, that it's going to help you to realize the effects of trauma and abuse in your life. And not only are you going to listen to it, but you're going to apply it, and you're going to pray and ask God to show you what's in your life that's affecting you. What's in your life that's a stumbling block to you. What's in your life that's hindering you. Because if you don't deal with these issues, who's going to do it? This is Apostle Lisa Biggers. I thank you all for your compliments. I thank you for sharing, and I will see you all next week. You all have a blessed afternoon.